a goddess on a seashell, nude yet not exposed, floating across turquoise waves like a dream caught mid-breath. She looks at you, not with desire, not with shame, but with knowing. She is Venus, born of the sea. And this is Botticelli's The Birth of Venus. But is that all she is? A symbol of divine beauty? Or is this painting hiding a deeper truth? A political message? A coded philosophy? A spiritual revelation disguised in human form? Today, we dive beneath the shimmering surface, to decode the symbols, to unearth the story, to ask the question, what truth was Botticelli really painting? Sandro Botticelli was born Alessandro di Mariano Filippi around 1445 in Florence, a city that, during the Renaissance, was a crucible of artistic genius and radical thought. He trained under Filippo Lippi and was influenced by the linear grace of Fra Angelico. But Botticelli would become something altogether different. He lived in a world ruled by the Medici, where art wasn't merely decoration, it was currency. It was propaganda. It was power, dressed in beauty. The young Botticelli was a favorite of Lorenzo de' Medici, called Il Magnifico, a man who believed that beauty could refine the soul and elevate society. But Botticelli's story is not linear. He would later renounce much of his work, burning paintings in the infamous bonfire of the vanities, spurred by the apocalyptic sermons of the radical preacher Savonarola. His life was beauty and doubt, faith and rebellion. And all of this, somehow, is painted into Venus. Florence in the late 15th century was not just the cradle of the Renaissance. It was its heartbeat. It was a place where science met spirit, where ancient texts were rediscovered and reinterpreted through a Christian lens. Philosophers like Marsilio Ficino and Pico della Mirandola resurrected the wisdom of Plato and married it with Christian doctrine. This fusion was called Neoplatonism, the belief that beauty is the path to the divine. To paint the body was to glorify the soul. To depict Venus was to depict love, not just earthly love, but divine love, the love that leads us back to God. Botticelli's patrons were steeped in this philosophy. So was Botticelli. So when he painted Venus, he wasn't painting just a goddess. He was painting an idea, an ideal, and maybe a warning. The painting measures nearly 6 feet by 9. At the center, Venus stands naked on a scallop shell. Her skin is luminous, like moonlight on still water. Her body forms a sinuous curve, her right arm modestly covering her breasts, her left hand resting near her thigh. She does not smile. She does not blush. She knows. To the left, the wind gods Zephyrus and Aura blow her ashore. To the right, a woman, possibly one of the Horae, the goddesses of the seasons, rushes forward with a pink, flower-embroidered cloak. Everything flows. Hair, drapery, waves. They ripple with rhythm. But this isn't realism. This is allegory. And allegory always points beyond itself. Venus is the Roman version of Aphrodite, the Greek goddess of love and beauty. According to myth, she was born from the sea foam after Uranus's severed genitals were thrown into the ocean, a violent origin for the embodiment of love. But in Botticelli's hands, she is not erotic. She is serene, detached, sacred. This is Venus Anadyomene, Venus rising from the sea, but reinterpreted through a Christian Neoplatonic lens. She represents not lust, but love, not body, but soul. Ficino wrote that Venus has 2 aspects: Venus vulgaris, the earthly, sensual Venus, Venus Celestis, the divine, soul-elevating Venus. Botticelli's Venus is Celestis. Her nudity is not a temptation, but a transparency. A body that reveals the divine through its perfection. She is an invitation, not to desire, but to ascend. The scallop shell is no random detail. It has deep symbolic roots. In classical mythology, the shell is associated with fertility and birth. In Christian tradition, it symbolizes pilgrimage and rebirth. Medieval pilgrims to Santiago de Compostela wore scallop shells as proof of their journey. So Venus arriving on a shell is not just being born. She's arriving as a symbol of transformation, a soul making its way toward enlightenment. And where does she arrive? Florence, symbolically. The heart of Renaissance rebirth. She is not just the goddess of love. She is the soul arriving at the shore of divine truth. On the left, Zephyrus, the god of the west wind, embraces the nymph Aura as they blow Venus toward land. Their cheeks puff with wind, their bodies entwined. Their breath sets the scene in motion. In Neoplatonic thought, winds represent passion, forces that move the soul. Zephyrus isn't just moving air, he's stirring desire. The longing that propels the soul toward beauty and through beauty toward the divine. But it's a double-edged force. Desire can elevate or destroy. And Botticelli paints that tension. The winds are powerful, but they are also chaotic. They bring Venus, and yet she remains calm in their storm. To the right, the woman waits with a red-lined, flower-covered cloak. She is likely one of the Horae, goddesses of time and the seasons. She represents the natural order, the transition from chaos to civilization. She does not rush forward to cover Venus from shame. She moves gently, like a ritual. Venus is being received, like a priestess donning ceremonial robes, like a soul being clothed in grace. Even the flowers have meaning. Roses, symbols of love, sacrifice, and Mary, the mother of Christ. This is not a simple act of modesty. It's initiation. Botticelli's technique is unlike many of his contemporaries. He doesn't rely on heavy shading or precise anatomical detail. Instead, he uses line, graceful, lyrical, flowing. His figures float rather than stand. His landscapes suggest a world more imagined than observed. This deliberate stylization isn't a lack of skill. It's a choice. He isn't showing us what's real. He's showing us what's true. That is the genius of Botticelli. He paints ideas, not just objects, emotions, not just scenes. His brushwork whispers, it doesn't shout. And in that whisper, we hear echoes of eternity. Let's not forget, this painting was created in Medici, Florence. Many believe it was commissioned by Lorenzo di Pier Francesco de' Medici, cousin to Lorenzo the Magnificent, for his private villa. It wasn't meant for public display. It was meant for reflection. The Medici were patrons not only of art, but of philosophy. They used beauty to display power and to refine it. Venus here becomes a political figure, a symbol of Florence itself, beautiful, refined, reborn. Some even see echoes of Simonetta Vespucci, the great Florentine beauty and possible muse to Botticelli, as the face of Venus. Was she the soul of Florence? or the memory of something lost. The birth of Venus was radical. There were no other large-scale nude mythologies like it in Renaissance art at the time. It broke conventions. It looked backward to antiquity, but forward to a more philosophical vision of art. It existed in its own world. And yet, it was nearly forgotten. Botticelli died in 1510, in near obscurity. By the time of Michelangelo, his style was considered outdated. It wasn't until the 19th century that he was rediscovered by the pre-Raphaelites, by Romantic poets, by dreamers who saw in him what his own age had lost sight of. The sacred made visible. So, what is the birth of Venus really about? It's not just a goddess on a shell. It's a mirror of an age that sought truth and beauty, a mirror of a man caught between flesh and spirit, a mirror of ourselves, still longing, still questioning, still hoping that beauty can save us. Venus isn't just born from the sea. She's born from thought, from philosophy, from the belief that through love, we find the divine. And that truth, Botticelli painted, stroke by golden stroke. When you next look at the birth of Venus, don't just see a painting, see a doorway to an age when art wasn't just made to be seen, but to be felt, lived, understood. Botticelli gave us a myth reborn, a soul unveiled, a whisper that has crossed centuries to reach us. And perhaps, just perhaps, to remind us that beauty still matters.